Now, more than 120,000 Armenian Christians remain trapped in their landlocked republic of Artsakh after the government of Azerbaijan and Islamic petro dictatorship blocked all roads in and out. 30,000 children are unable to go to school and a humanitarian disaster is unfolding. The Armenian National Association of Australia has been calling upon the Albanese government to put pressure on Azerbaijan to open the corridor, but so far these pleas have fallen on deaf ears, with the Foreign Minister Penny Wong unresponsive. Michael Kolokosian is the Executive Director of the Armenian National Association, which represents 50,000 Armenians living here in Australia. He joins me now. Michael, why is the Azerbaijan government putting pressure on the people of this autonomous region of Artsakh?
Well, Lyle, thank you firstly for having me. It's great to join you to speak about this issue and bring greater awareness to the persecution of Christian Armenians in the Republic of Artsakh.
Absolutely.
At the core of the issue is a territorial dispute. Artsakh, also known as Nagorno-Karabakh, is a de facto independent region in the South Caucasus. It borders Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Iran. However, following the collapse of the Ottoman and Russian empires in the early 20th century, Nagorno-Karabakh or Artsakh came under the control of Soviet authorities. And at the time, the then Commissioner of Nationalities, Joseph Stalin, as part of his divide and conquer rule, decided to place Artsakh in the Soviet authority of Azerbaijan as an autonomous oblast. It remained that way, unfortunately, for many years. The Armenian population was autonomous, but still persecuted by the central Azerbaijani government. However, in the late 1990s, the people of Artsakh held a referendum and declared their rights to independence and their rights to self-determination. The right to self-determination is a fundamental human right outlined by international law. It's something that the people of Artsakh conducted democratically. 82% of the population turned out for that referendum, and 99.8% voted in favour for self-determination. The people of Artsakh have lived in that region for millennia. It has always been the ancestral homeland of Armenians, with many monasteries, churches in that area. However, the Azerbaijani authorities and that Islamic petro dictatorship has claimed the region for now over a century. So the Azerbaijani regime intends to suffocate, as part of this blockade and their ongoing aggression, which we've seen since the 2020 Artsakh war, to suffocate and starve the Armenians there, to force them to ethnically cleanse the region of its Armenian inhabitants.
Hard to believe, Michael, here in 2023, you're using terms like ethnic cleansing and persecution of Christians who have, as you say, lived there for hundreds of years and millennia. How did the Armenians of Artsakh and that part of the region, how did they survive historically as Christians in a region that did become highly Islamicised under the Ottoman Empire?
Well, Armenians were a group that liked to survive post the Armenian genocide in 1915 to 23. 1.5 million Armenians were massacred. A majority of our community here in Australia are the descendants of survivors of that genocide. Unfortunately, we had to flee our ancestral homelands in what is now eastern Turkey, Anatolia, and many Armenians were forced to move to the Middle East or to current-day Armenia. But the people of Artsakh have lived on this land, as I mentioned, for so many centuries, and they refused to leave their homes, their properties, everything they hold so dearly, and no matter what the Azerbaijani regime tries to throw at them, whether it's indiscriminately bombing civilian settlements, whether it's currently a blockade, cutting off gas pipelines, electricity, the people of Artsakh remain committed to that right to self-determination, which is upheld under Article 1 of the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights. They fundamentally believe that they have a right to live in their land and to live in a democracy, and they're not willing to allow a regime like Azerbaijan, which has been run by the same family for 3 decades now, to threaten them with an iron fist.
So Michael, it's intriguing to me then, the Islamic people who live here in Australia and other parts of the world, they say Islam is a religion of peace. Where are the Islamic leaders condemning the actions of the Azerbaijan government in persecuting these people in Artsakh? Are there other Muslim leaders who will stand against this sort of tyranny and ethnic and religious cleansing?
Yeah, well, look, I think at the core of the current blockade, any civilian, any Australian would condemn this humanitarian crisis. I think
but where are the public voices in the Islamic community condemning an Islamic state that's clearly acting, not in accordance with international law and established conventions?
Well, you're right, Lyle. Unfortunately, we haven't had those sentiments being shared by members of the Islamic community or leaders of the Islamic community. I think it has to do with the influence of Azerbaijan and Turkey and the role of their leaders, silencing those who would even speak up about this issue. Because I fundamentally believe that there are those in the community, in the Islamic faith, who would stand against this, who would stand against this blockade.
I agree with that.
But they're silenced by dictators, oil dictatorships, 2 dictatorships, who not only deny the Armenian genocide, but who actively conduct aggression against Christian Armenians today. So there is no appetite from those regimes to allow people to speak up against this humanitarian crisis. And it's unfortunate that we haven't had those sentiments shared here in Australia as of yet.
Absolutely. You're spot on, Michael. And, the core of this problem, or a big part of the core of it, is the fact that Turkey doesn't acknowledge the Armenian genocide in 1915, which happened under the cover of the Dardanelles campaign, which Australians and New Zealanders fought so heroically in at Gallipoli. But all these years later, we've got this persecution continuing as if we haven't learnt the lessons of that original genocide. Why is the Albanese government then so reluctant to speak up about what is clearly a humanitarian crisis looming in Artsakh?
Well, the Armenian National Committee of Australia, we've made several pleas on behalf of our community to the Albanese government through Senator Penny Wong, the Foreign Affairs Minister of Australia. We've called on her government, the Albanese government and Minister Wong in her position as Foreign Minister, to call out Azerbaijan, to condemn the blockade and to stand with the international community, the likes of the European Parliament, France, the US, Canada, who have all called on Azerbaijan to open the road of life. It's considered the road of life because 400 tons of goods go through that road on a daily basis, which hasn't happened for over 200 days now. And we're encouraging our Foreign Minister to stand in line with our allies, democratic countries who have called on Azerbaijan to do this, and use its well-respected voice in the international community to amplify the concerns of local Australians, local Armenian Australians. The Albanese government hasn't engaged with our community on this issue as effectively as we hoped. We have sent, as I mentioned, numerous appeals. Our most recent appeal has gone unanswered in the lead up to the 200th day of the blockade, which was on the 29th of June. And the reasons for that are not justifiable. We're talking, you mentioned that it's a humanitarian crisis. We're not asking for the Australian government to comment on the territorial dispute that is currently taking place between the people of Artsakh and the dictatorship of Azerbaijan. We're asking the Australian government to do one simple thing: stand with the International Court of Justice, the top judicial organ of the United Nations, which has ordered provisional measures on Azerbaijan to open the corridor. It's as simple as that. An Australian judge, Hilary Charlesworth, is a member of the ICJ. She voted in favour of those provisional measures. So we are asking our government, the government that represents us, to echo the sentiments of Justice Charlesworth and the ICJ more broadly, and it's Australia's allies. The reluctance could stem from the economic relationships that Azerbaijan has with Australia. It could stem from Turkey's role and so-called as a so-called ally of Australia, and its its threats against Australia for things like the genocide, but also because the Australian ambassador is based in Ankara, and Turkey and Azerbaijan have such a great relationship that any condemnation of Azerbaijan would cause disruption by Turkey. So these are the sentiments that we're feeling on the ground. But to our community, to Christians, to our allies, whether they're from the Greek, Assyrian, Jewish, Kurdish communities, this isn't a justifiable response from the Foreign Minister or the Albanese government.
No, it's absolutely not, Michael. And look, what can Christian groups do in particular to support these 120,000 Christians that are trapped there and that are being persecuted, potentially facing a genocide? What can Australian Christians do to support your community here in Australia and to put pressure on the government to take a different approach?
Well, because of the commentary from the international community and the awareness that's been raised, particularly from genocide groups as well, Genocide Watch, the Lemkin Institute for Genocide Prevention, the International Association of Genocide Scholars, who are all issuing red flag alerts or statements notifying the international community of the risk of genocide. We're doing our bit to amplify that and raise awareness here in Australia. The Armenian National Committee of Australia, in the lead up to the 200 days of the blockade, launched a parliamentary petition calling on the Australian Parliament and government to stand in line with the International Court of Justice and prevent a second Armenian genocide by calling on Azerbaijan to open the corridor. So,
where can people go to sign that petition, Michael?
That petition, it's an e-petition on the Australian government's, on the Australian Parliament website. You can simply type in e-petition and it'll take you to that link. It's on page 2. You simply need to verify your email when they send you a link. You can also look for the link on the Armenian National Committee of Australia's social media platforms. It's pretty much everywhere. So we're really encouraging our community and the Christian community to get behind us on this and help sign that petition.
Fantastic. Well, I certainly urge everyone to do that, Michael. Michael, let's just hope that this is not part of what many Christians in Australia are seeing as quite a hostile federal government. We've seen the forced takeover of the Calvary Hospital in Canberra and the Albanese government backing the radical actions of the ACT government to take that land and property. And we're seeing, obviously a lack of response to the persecution of Christians overseas. Let's really hope that the Albanese government picks up its game. We can start by at least getting behind your community and signing that e-petition. Michael, thank you so much for being with us today and helping shine a light on what's happening in this part of the world.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me and thank you for allowing us to bring attention to this important issue.